elaborate a little bit more on what John just said. We actually had, in the summer and in the early autumn, a reasonable recovery in those sectors of the economy that respond to monetary policy. Lower interest rates, Bob, lower interest rates did stimulate housing a bit. We did have some recovery in auto sales and other parts of consumer spending, but we had a couple of very powerful negative forces at work. First, we have tremendous fiscal drag in the economy from the federal, state, and local tax increases going on in various parts of the country. And secondly, we had an extraordinary surge in import penetration. The rate of growth in merchandise imports since April was the highest ever in a recovery. So part of this incremental spending was diverted overseas. So we can, I think, accomplish a bit by cutting interest rates further. We can spur housing and consumer durable sectors here this winter by cutting interest rates some more. But I think that by mid-January you'll see the White House leaning towards some kind of fiscal package to try and stimulate income directly. And there may even be a reopening of the whole debate about tax reform in this country that we had 5 years ago.
We go back and take a look at some of the things in 1986.
That's right. There's now a major lobbying effort going on by big companies, including IBM, to restore the investment tax credit, to try and provide direct and very substantial stimulus to investment spending in 1992. I can't say it'll happen, but the odds are very high it'll be taken seriously.
Is it a more politically feasible thing than the capital gains tax proposal?
The capital gains tax would impact the economy very indirectly over the long term. A change in the ITC would be felt very quickly and far more dramatically in 1992.
Mr. Eisner, do you buy into the income tax credit proposal?
I would. It was investment tax credit you're talking about. I've long opposed investment tax credits as an unwarranted interference in the market, giving preference to certain kinds of investment, hence at the expense of other kinds, and always surprised that so many free marketeers are quick to latch onto it. I will say for the investment tax credit, I could devise an investment tax credit, which is probably not what IBM and a lot of the business people would quite like, which might have some impact now. And that would be not a credit for all their investment, but a credit for their investment over and above, let's say, the average of previous years, a big credit for that, and this they won't like, a temporary one. Because the investment tax credit, and I've done a lot of studies on it, doesn't really get you a lot more investment. Businesses invest if they think it's going to be profitable. IBM will invest more if it can sell its computers. And if you just give them a tax credit without telling them their sales are going to be up, that may not tip the scale. But if you tell them, look, you get a 20% credit for the investment you do between now and June 30th, and after that is gone, that's a big incentive to do it now. Now that means over the long run they may not be gaining much in terms of profits, but if our purpose is not to help IBM profits, but to help the economy, you want to try to stimulate spending now when you're in the recession.
I think you and I have just agreed for the first time in 30 years.
Bob, I agree with what you said about money before, too. Okay, you should ease up on money.
This is historic. We'll see if we can get a tape and send it
incidentally,
for Christmas.
David's right. I mean, I said what should be done. David's right. They aren't going to have that patience. They're not going to wait to see whether monetary policy does it. They're going to be moving on the fiscal front. But let me add one other thing. You aren't going to get the investment tax credit or the capital gains cut for free. There's going to be something asked as a quid pro quo. There's going to be a price paid.
What do you think it would be?
Well, it all depends on how stimulative they want to be. If they want to be stimulative, then there may not be a price paid. If they want, there's a tax cut for the so-called middle class. But if they don't want to be very stimulative, the quid pro quo is going to be a higher marginal rate on the upper income group. That's what the opposition is saying. If you want your tax credit, if you want your capital gains cut, yes, you can have it, but you're going to pay another way, and that holds back
John,
a lot of people.
The ITC is so expensive, potentially 30 or 40 billion. That new higher marginal tax rate that Bob referred to is not going to be on the millionaires like the Wall Street Journal is suggesting. It's going to be for incomes $5,000 above the congressional pay level. It'll come in at a much lower level.
That's
than
still
people currently receive.
You have to face up to something. If you want to stimulate the economy, you want to stimulate it. If you're trying to redress the distribution of income, that's another issue. You know, I can offer an argument the rich should be taxed more and the middle class and the poor less. But that's not the way to stimulate the economy. All this becomes politics.
What is the way to stimulate the economy?
The way to stimulate the economy, monetary policy Bob mentioned, and I agree with that. The other is to simply get more spending. Now, the spending can be by private individuals, by you and me, by business, or by government. I would have all of them. The kind of investment tax credit I propose would stimulate business spending now. A tax cut, not a temporary one here, but a permanent tax cut, would generally stimulate spending. I could give you income tax, excise tax cuts on people. If you cut taxes on the things people have to buy and tell them they will come up later, the taxes may go up later, that again is an incentive to spend now. I'd go, for example...
Give me an example on that.
Well, I mean, I don't know what excise taxes are left now, but whatever federal excise taxes there are, I would cut them temporarily. You could even
So these taxes on boats and furs and $10,000 watches?
Boats and furs, that's going to put boat workers and fur workers to work, whatever they are. I would, for example, go ahead with a tax credit for people buying new homes, a temporary one, to try to induce them to buy homes now as opposed to the future.
And then do you also want immediate government investment in infrastructure and put people to work?
That is a big thing, because the big advantage there, I'm convinced, is not only will it put people to work now, but that should meet a concern that a lot of us probably have, whether we're mortgaging our future. We're mortgaging our future not with the government debt and not with deficits. We're mortgaging our future because we're not providing enough real capital, buildings, factories, roads, bridges, research that can be used in the future. And a lot of that takes government spending. We shouldn't hesitate to undertake
I never saw a tax cut or an increase in government spending that Bob didn't like. But that may be very good on that's very that's true. That may be very good.
That's true. Okay, forgive me.
There's a little trillion in there,
I
Bob.
try to be clever.
And cutting the defense spending will hurt the economy. That's why I'd want to switch the defense spending to something else.
But I appreciate what Bob's trying to say, the temporary aspect of this. But the problem, as I see it, is when you get these things on the board in Washington, temporary has a tendency to last a long time.
No, they did a lot of changing in '86, but I'll come back. I got to thank all of you gentlemen for being here. Our thanks to David Hale, Robert Eisner, Robert Diederich, and John Skorberg for being with us. And thank you for being with us. I'm John Calloway. Good night. You ought to be able to get a word. What would you tell the president in terms of getting this economy going again?
Well, if we get into the politics of it and we get into 1992, I think we are talking cut taxes. And what I would worry about is the entire tax burden. And as Professor Eisner was saying, if we just toy with that tax burden and don't bring it down, I think we have problems. But I'd like to see the tax burden, total federal tax burden, come down.
By the way, tomorrow night on this program.